Through the lawyer, it was revealed that the driver's actions weren't his own idea. They were carried out under the orders of his employer, Mr. Najim, who had instructed him to end Afrina's life. The reason? The babysitter, Afrina, had accidentally stumbled upon a shameful secret. One afternoon, Afrina entered Johannara's room unannounced and caught her employer in a compromising position, with her own father-in-law on the bed. Hi there, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another shocking real-life event that happened in our world. This time, the story comes from the city of Bogra, Bangladesh. It's a case that's unique, bizarre, and absolutely fascinating, so you won't want to miss this one. What's the full story behind this mysterious case? Stick around, and let's unpack it together. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this story with your friends so more people can hear about it. Let's get into it. In 1992, a beautiful woman named Johannara was born in Sherpur, Bangladesh. After finishing school, she moved to the city of Bogra to work at a factory. It was there she met Zakir, a young man who owned a clothing store in one of Bogra's malls. Zakir was the youngest of two siblings, the son of Mr. Najim, a respected local government officer in Bogra. Though his father was a widower and well known in the area, Zakir wasn't the type to rely on his family's status. His older brother had already moved to Rajshahi with his own family, building a life from his own savings. Zakir fell deeply in love with Johannara, and in 2013, when he was 24 and she was 21, he proposed. After getting married, the couple decided to rent a house and live independently, despite Mr. Najim's offer for them to move in with him. Zakir kept running his clothing store, and by 2014, their first child was born. In 2015, Mr. Najim remarried a colleague named Tamina. He was thrilled to have a bigger family again, but tragedy struck in July 2017 when Zakir was killed in a car accident. At the time, Johannara was 6 months pregnant with their second child. Grieving and vulnerable, she struggled to manage on her own. Her in-laws persuaded her to move into their large home so they could help care for her and her child. Reluctantly, she agreed and moved in with her son. In October 2017, her second child, a daughter, was born. This brought great joy to Mr. Najim, who adored his two grandchildren. With his wife Tamina by his side, he spent his days doting on the little ones. Tamina bonded with both the children and her daughter-in-law, often joining their daily activities. By early 2018, however, Johannara began to feel restless. Staying home all day with the kids wasn't enough for her anymore. She thought about reopening the clothing store that Zakir had worked so hard to establish. It had been closed since his passing, but the business had always been successful, and Zakir had encouraged her to keep it going. Determined to honor his wishes, she asked her father-in-law for permission to start running the shop again. At first, Mr. Najim hesitated. The grandchildren were still very young, especially the baby, who was only a few months old. But after some convincing, he finally agreed. By late January 2018, when her daughter was 6 months old, plans were set in motion. Tamina stepped in to look after the kids while Johannara worked. However, as time went on, it became clear that Tamina was struggling to manage both grandchildren on her own. To ease the burden, the family decided to hire a babysitter. Through neighbors, they found Afrina, a 24-year-old with 2 years of experience caring for young children. Afrina was a natural with the kids, and her presence brought some much-needed relief to the household. Meanwhile, Tamina started accompanying Johannara at the shop, rediscovering her passion for selling clothes. As it turned out, Tamina had a background in retail from her younger days, so it felt like a natural fit. Meanwhile, the family's driver, Nusrat, continued to help out whenever possible. She'd drop Mr. Najim off at work in the morning, then return home to assist with the children. In the afternoons, she would pick him up, though he wasn't the kind of man who demanded constant service. If it was late or inconvenient, he'd happily take a bus, taxi, or catch a ride with a coworker heading in the same direction. On the flip side, Mr. Najim was well known for his involvement in community and educational activities. People admired his humility and generosity, often saying he'd make a great mayor. But Najim wasn't one to seek power or attention. He was content helping others and staying low-key. By late February 2018, though, Tamina started noticing changes in her husband's behavior. He seemed distant, colder, and more indifferent. At first, she thought it might just be exhaustion. After all, he often worked late. Their busy schedules didn't help either. Tamina and her daughter-in-law, Johanna, always returned home from the clothing store around 7 p.m., equally drained from the day. Conversations over dinner were brief before everyone went straight to bed, only to wake up early and start again. But something felt off. Najim's behavior had shifted in ways Tamina couldn't ignore. He no longer wanted to be hugged at night and avoided physical closeness. The daytime check-in calls he used to make? Those had stopped too. Weekend outings were replaced with long hours of him staying in bed, avoiding conversation altogether. Concerned, Tamina confided in Johanna, who reassured her. "He's probably just tired," she said. "He's 52 now, he needs more rest." By early March, however, another change occurred. Johanna started leaving the shop earlier, often leaving Tamina to handle it on her own. She explained that her 8-month-old baby was sick and cranky, so she needed to focus on caring for the child. She even suggested they temporarily close the shop to avoid overburdening Tamina. But Tamina insisted on keeping it open, saying the slow trickle of customers wasn't too tiring. Besides, with Johanna and the babysitter looking after the kids at home, she didn't mind staying at the shop to keep herself occupied. Then came March 13, 2018. Tamina was puzzled to learn that Nusrat, their driver, was no longer working for them. According to Najim, Nusrat had left suddenly due to a family emergency in his village. His son had faced some sort of disaster, and he hadn't had time to notify anyone except Najim. 2 days later, on March 15th, Tamina's world was turned upside down. After returning home from the shop around 7:30 p.m., she was shocked to find her house swarming with people and police officers. Confused and panicked, she was introduced to the officers by a neighbor and informed of a horrifying incident. Afrina, the babysitter, had been attacked with a knife and rushed to Bogra City General Hospital. Tragically, her injuries were too severe, and she didn't survive. Even more shocking was the revelation that Nusrat, the driver, had been detained as the primary suspect in the attack. Adding to the chaos, Tamina learned that her husband, Najim, her daughter-in-law, Johanna, and her 2 grandchildren had been taken into custody to provide statements about the incident. To cut a long story short, Nusrat initially stayed silent about his actions. However, surveillance footage from the housing complex caught him carrying Afrina's body to a park, thinking she was already lifeless. But she wasn't. Afrina regained consciousness long enough to cry out for help and tell bystanders who had attacked her. Sadly, her injuries were too severe, and she passed away shortly after. This led to Nusrat's arrest, though his motives remained unclear at first. According to Johanna, Najim, and Tamina, there had never been any issues between Nusrat and Afrina, no arguments or disputes. But Najim speculated that the two might have been involved in a secret relationship that went south. Since Nusrat was married, perhaps Afrina had discovered something or demanded accountability, and in an attempt to cover it up, he resorted to the unthinkable. Interestingly, Nusrat had disappeared for a few days leading up to the incident, which only deepened the mystery. The investigation dragged on for weeks without much progress, and prosecutors demanded a harsh sentence for Nusrat. Then, out of nowhere, Nusrat confessed to his lawyer, revealing a shocking truth that no one saw coming. Through his lawyer, it was revealed that Nusrat's actions were carried out under the orders of his employer, Mr. Najim. The shocking reason? Afrina had accidentally walked in on Johanna and her father-in-law Najim, in a compromising situation in Johanna's bedroom. On the day of the incident, Afrina was supposed to be at the city park with the eldest grandson for an annual celebration. Nusrat had been sent out of town on an errand, but the grandson got injured and insisted on coming home early. When Afrina returned, she used her spare key to enter the house and walked straight into the room without knocking. What she saw enraged Najim. He knew his pristine reputation would be at risk if Afrina, who was known to chat with neighbors, revealed what she had witnessed. At first, Najim planned to send Afrina back to her village to keep her quiet. But the fear of losing his honorable reputation made him reconsider. Firing her wasn't an option, as it might raise suspicions, and keeping her around seemed dangerous. Adding to the tension, both Najim and Johanna found Afrina's behavior increasingly concerning. She was often seen whispering with Tamina, speaking in hushed tones on the phone, and visiting neighbors frequently. All of this only heightened their paranoia. So, Najim decided to eliminate the problem entirely. Not wanting to get involved directly, he turned to Nusrat, someone he trusted and who had always been loyal. Najim offered him $7,000 and promised that his contacts in the police would ensure Nusrat wouldn't face jail time. Believing his employer's promises, Nusrat carried out the horrifying plan. However, things didn't go as smoothly as Najim had assured. Over a month after the incident, Nusrat remained in custody, and Najim's attempts to pull strings for his release were unsuccessful. At his trial in October 2018, Nusrat confessed to attacking Afrina while she was in the shower. He revealed that his employer, Mr. Najim, had been waiting downstairs, ready to intervene if Tamina's mother suddenly appeared. The original plan was to dispose of Afrina's body by midnight, but fear of being caught by Najim's wife forced them to act sooner. By late afternoon, they decided to take her to the park instead. What they didn't realize was that Afrina was still alive. She managed to identify her attacker to the police before succumbing to her injuries. Nusrat's testimony was backed by damning evidence. Chat messages between him and Najim detailing the date of the attack, the tools to be used, the location for disposing of the body, and follow-up messages confirming the job was done. There were also bank transfer records showing payment for the crime. Despite his repeated denials, the prosecutor succeeded in implicating 52-year-old Najim as one of the masterminds behind the conspiracy. On November 1, 2018, the Bogra Regional High Court delivered its verdict. Both Mr. Najim and Nusrat were found guilty of murder and conspiracy. They were sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of release until their full terms were served. Johanna was also implicated in the case. Evidence showed that she was present during the attack on Afrina. She was in the room but pretended not to know what was happening. The 26-year-old was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 10 years. She remained silent about her alleged relationship with her father-in-law, refusing to address the accusations. After the trial, custody of Johanna's children was given to her brother-in-law in Rajshahi. As for Tamina, she stayed behind in her husband's house, living a solitary life. She ran her late son-in-law's clothing shop to make ends meet, waiting faithfully for Najim's release. Despite her heartbreak over her husband's betrayal with Johanna, she chose not to remarry and remained committed to her husband. What lessons can we learn from this story?